March 1943. Mid-Atlantic. 2:47 a.m. A German U-boat surfaces to recharge its batteries in complete darkness. The commander scans the horizon with binoculars. Nothing. The sea is empty for miles in every direction. They have done this hundreds of times. Surface at night, charge the batteries, submerge before dawn. The British cannot see them. The Americans cannot find them. They are invisible. But 8,000 feet above them, an American B-24 Liberator is watching. The crew cannot see the submarine with their eyes. The ocean below is pitch black, but on a small green screen in the aircraft's belly, a bright dot appears. 25 miles away. The navigator marks the position. The pilot banks toward it. The U-boat commander has no idea what is about to happen. By the time the German lookouts hear the aircraft engines, it is already too late. Depth charges bracket the submarine. The U-boat crash dives, but it has been hit. Water pours into the control room. Within minutes, the submarine is gone. 47 men with it. Here is what should terrify you. This was not a lucky sighting. This was not daylight reconnaissance. This was a technology so advanced, so secret, that German naval intelligence refused to believe the reports they were receiving from U-boat commanders. And the story of how America put radar in the sky and dropped it from parachutes reveals an innovation that changed naval warfare forever. Let me show you how it worked. The Battle of the Atlantic in 1943 was the most critical campaign of World War II that most people do not fully understand. Britain was starving, not metaphorically, actually starving. The island nation imported 55 million tons of supplies every year before the war. By 1943, that number had dropped to 23 million tons. German U-boats were sinking Allied merchant ships faster than they could be replaced. The math was simple and devastating. If the U-boats won, Britain would surrender within months. If the Allies won, Germany would be strangled. Everything depended on finding submarines in an ocean covering 41 million square miles. The problem was physics. A surfaced U-boat presents a tiny target. The conning tower stands maybe 15 feet above the water. In daylight, you might spot one at 5 miles if conditions are perfect. At night, you see nothing. German submarines operated on a simple principle. Surface at night when aircraft cannot see you. Submerge during the day when they can. It had worked since 1939. But in early 1943, something changed. U-boats began disappearing. Not occasionally, systematically. Commanders who had survived years of combat were being caught on the surface at night, in storms, in conditions where detection should have been impossible. The German Navy's war diary from April 1943 records the confusion. The enemy is locating our submarines by a method we do not understand. They were right. The method was called airborne radar, and the Americans had just made it small enough to fit in a bomber. Here's what radar does. It sends out radio waves that bounce off objects and return to the receiver. By measuring how long the signal takes to come back, you can calculate the distance to the target. The British had invented ground-based radar in the 1930s, but putting radar in an aircraft was a completely different challenge. The problem was size and weight. Early radar systems filled entire rooms. The transmitters alone weighed thousands of pounds. The antenna arrays were massive. You could not just bolt that into a B-24 Liberator and expect it to fly. American and British engineers had to miniaturize everything. The transmitter, the receiver, the antenna, the display. They had to make it light enough to carry, durable enough to survive combat, and powerful enough to detect a submarine's conning tower at 25 miles. They succeeded in. The ASV Mark III radar, developed in 1942, weighed 250 pounds. It could be installed in the nose or belly of maritime patrol aircraft, and it could detect a surfaced U-boat at ranges that seemed impossible to German commanders who had no idea the technology existed. Let me paint you a picture of what this looked like in combat. You are a radar operator on a B-24 Liberator flying anti-submarine patrol over the Atlantic. You are staring at a small circular screen, maybe 8 inches across. with a sweeping green line that rotates like a clock hand. Most of the time, you see nothing but noise. Waves create small echoes. Rain creates clutter, but then suddenly, a bright dot appears at the edge of the screen, 25 miles away, bearing 047 degrees. You call it out to the navigator. He plots the position. The pilot turns toward the contact. You watch the dot on your screen get closer. 20 miles, 15 miles, 10 miles. The bombardier prepares the depth charges. At 5 miles, the pilot descends to attack altitude. The U-boat is still on the surface, still charging its batteries, completely unaware that it has been tracked for 20 minutes. The attack happens fast. The aircraft roars out of the darkness. Searchlights snap on. The U-boat's deck gun crew scrambles to their weapon, but there is no time. Depth charges fall in a pattern. 4, 6, 8 explosions bracket the submarine. If the U-boat commander is lucky, he gets the boat under fast enough to survive. If he is not, his crew dies in the next 90 seconds. This happened hundreds of times in 1943. German submariners called it Black May. In a single month, May 1943, Allied aircraft and ships sank 43 U-boats. That is more than one per day. The German Navy pulled its submarines out of the North Atlantic entirely. They simply could not survive. But here is where the story gets even more remarkable. The Americans did not just put radar in aircraft. They started dropping it from parachutes. Here is why. Submarines, when they detected an attacking aircraft, would crash dive immediately. They could get under the surface in 30 to 45 seconds if the crew was well trained. Once submerged, the U-boat was invisible to radar. Radio waves do not penetrate water. A submarine 50 feet down might as well not exist. The aircraft would circle the area, searching, but the submarine was gone. American engineers realized they needed a way to track submerged submarines. They needed something that could float on the surface and keep reporting the submarine's position even after it dug. So they invented the sonobuoy. A sonobuoy is a listening device dropped from an aircraft. It hits the water, a parachute deploys to slow its descent, and it begins broadcasting. Early sonobuoys contained a hydrophone, a waterproof microphone that detects sound underwater. When a submarine dives, its electric motors, its propellers, its hull compress under pressure. All of that creates noise. The sonobuoy picks up that noise and transmits it back to the aircraft via radio. The first combat deployment of sonobuoys happened in 1942. By 1943, American patrol aircraft were carrying dozens of them. The tactics evolved rapidly. When radar detected a surfaced U-boat, the aircraft would close to attack range. If the submarine dove before the attack, the crew would drop a pattern of sonobuoys around the last known position. Then they would circle overhead, listening. When they detected the submarine's motors, they would drop depth charges on that position. The U-boat could not hide. It could not run silent forever. Eventually, it had to move, and when it did, the sonobuoys heard it. German submarine commanders described this new reality in their after-action reports. One commander wrote in July 1943, "We are being hunted by aircraft that find us in total darkness. When we dive, they drop objects that track us underwater. We cannot escape. We cannot fight. We can only die." The reports are chilling because they reveal the absolute technological superiority the Allies had achieved. But the Germans were not stupid. They knew something had changed. They captured damaged Allied aircraft. They interrogated prisoners. They analyzed wreckages. By mid-1943, German intelligence had confirmed that Allied aircraft were using some form of radio detection. They did not know the details, but they knew it existed. The Allies treated radar technology as one of the most closely guarded secrets of the war. Pilots flying aircraft equipped with a SV radar received explicit orders. If you are shot down or forced to crash land, destroy the radar equipment before abandoning the aircraft. Use an axe. Use grenades. Use fire. Do not let it fall into enemy hands intact. The magnetron tubes that generated the radar signal were particularly sensitive. If the Germans captured one and reverse-engineered it, they could build countermeasures. They could build their own airborne radar. The technological advantage would disappear. There are documented cases of pilots who crashed in the ocean, floating in life rafts, watching their aircraft sink, and only abandoning ship after they had smashed the radar equipment with a fire axe. That is how seriously the Allies took the security of this technology. The impact on the war was decisive. In the first 3 months of 1943, German U-boats sank 627,377 tons of Allied shipping. By the last 3 months of 1943, after airborne radar had been widely deployed, that number dropped to 329,614 tons. The U-boats were losing, not because they lacked courage or skill, but because they were fighting an enemy they could not see, using technology they did not have. Here is the paradox that German submariners faced. To operate, a U-boat had to surface. It had to charge its batteries. It had to ventilate the interior. It had to run its diesel engines. A fully submerged U-boat running on battery power could only stay under for about 24 hours before it had to surface. That meant every U-boat, no matter how cautious, had to expose itself regularly. And every time it surfaced, it could be detected by radar at ranges far beyond visual sighting. The Germans tried countermeasures. They developed the schnorkel, a breathing tube that allowed submarines to run their diesel engines while remaining submerged. But the schnorkel itself could be detected by radar. They tried coating their conning towers with radar-absorbent material. It did not work. The return signal was reduced, but not eliminated. They tried sailing at night during storms, hoping the weather would mask their radar signature. Sometimes it worked. Usually, it did not. By 1944, the German U-boat force was effectively defeated. Of the 1,162 U-boats commissioned during World War II, 785 were lost. That is a 67.5% loss rate. Approximately 30,000 German submariners served during the war. Around 28,000 of them died. That is a 75% fatality rate. No other branch of any military in World War II suffered casualties that severe. The U-boat service was a death sentence, and the men who served knew it. The technology that made this possible, airborne radar and sonobuoys, did not stop evolving. Modern maritime patrol aircraft carry radar systems that can detect a submarine's periscope from 50 miles away. They carry sonobuoys that can classify the acoustic signature of a submarine, identifying not just that a submarine is there, but which class it is, which navy operates it, sometimes even which specific boat it is. The descendants of those 1943-era ASV radars are now so sophisticated they can map the ocean floor, track surface ships in real time, and detect submerged submarines by the thermal wake they leave behind. But it all started with a 250-pound box of electronics in the nose of a B-24 Liberator, flown by crews who understood that finding the enemy in an empty ocean was the difference between victory and starvation. Here is what is remarkable about this story. The technology was invented, tested, deployed, and made decisive in less than 2 years. In 1941, airborne radar was experimental. By 1943, it was winning the Battle of the Atlantic. That's American and British engineering, moving at a pace that the Germans simply could not match. They had smart scientists. They had capable engineers. But they did not have the industrial infrastructure, the resources, or the time to catch up. The German Navy knew they were losing the technology race. A naval intelligence report from August 1943 states, "The enemy possesses detection methods that render our submarines vulnerable in all weather conditions, day and night. Until we develop equivalent technology, losses will remain unsustainable." They never developed equivalent technology. The war ended first. There is a museum in Washington, D.C., the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, where you can see one of these ASV radar units. It is a small, unimpressive-looking box. Dials, switches, a circular screen. It does not look like the weapon that won the Battle of the Atlantic. But that is exactly what it was. So here is my question for you. Knowing that a 250-pound piece of electronics changed the course of the war, Knowing that German submariners went from hunters to hunted in a matter of months, do you think technology or tactics matter more in war? Because the U-boat crews were some of the most highly trained, most experienced sailors in the world, but they were defeated by radar operators who just watched a green screen and called out coordinates. Drop your answer in the comments right now. I want to see this debate. If you learned something that changed how you see the Battle of the Atlantic, hit that like button and subscribe for more history that reveals the technology that changed warfare. Thanks for watching.